Hey, John here. Here's lick of the day number 113. It's an Yngwie-Style picking run. As usual, I'm going to play it once slowly and then break it down. And after the breakdown, I'm going to share some practice advice, so stick around for that. We start here on the 15th fret of the high E string. Alright, so this one uses the harmonic minor and natural minor. It's kind of a mix here. On the single string run, it's all natural minor, but we have this kind of a special Yngwie pattern. I've heard other players use it as well, but the first time I've heard it was from Yngwie's first album. This kind of... So basically what happens here is that you use the natural 7th as a passing tone here. So you basically have the B natural minor going down from the flat 6 to the root, and then you have sort of the harmonic minor sound here, but then we go straight into the flat 7 as well, and then you go into flat 6 and then to the 5th, and then from here we just go up again. So and we kind of get the same thing on the way back here, it's just a different fingering. But it's quite easy to remember as well, because if you look at the fingering here, basically it's using 15, 14, 12 on 3 strings going down. I start with a slide, pull off, and then I do a downstroke here. I'm not picking this the way that Yngwie probably would pick it, because he tends to use some legato with his descending runs, and then he would use economy picking for ascending runs. But I just alternate pick it here. So basically when you end up here on the 11th fret, you're just going to go up with 11, 12, 14 on the G and B. And then you have to stretch a little bit here to get 10, 12, 14. So we put it together. And once we get to this note, we're gonna get into a big staple of Yngwie's single string playing, and that's this sequence. So a group of 4 sequence. So basically, if we have the notes here, 10, 12, 14, number them from left to right, 1, 2, 3. The sequence goes 3, 1, 2, 3. Then you move up to the next set of 3 notes, which would be 12, 14, 15. Still the same sequence though, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the sequence number I'm saying here is basically the order of the notes. There's nothing to do with the fingerings, you don't get confused. Then we move up to 14, 15, 17. Still the same sequence. And that leads us up to the root here on 19. So and from here, I do a pull. I'm gonna end up on a downstroke here. Pull off, up, 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 down. So we're gonna go down in this 5-string arpeggio shape. And basically that's just 19, 14, 15, 16, 16, 17, 14. So this is a B minor arpeggio, so the 1 chord of the key. And that's basically it. So if I put it together again. And I notated this in sextuplets. Basically when you use it though, you don't need to be that strict. You can instead aim for certain notes rhythmically. But try it with 16th notes, try it with 6-note triplets, and if you're adventurous, do 5 notes per beat, 7 notes per beat, anything like that. Any and all of it will help your technique, so give it a try. All right, practice-wise here, if you're not used to leading into mixing legato and picking, this can be a good thing to practice. So and if you've seen any of my previous videos, you know by now it's a really good idea to move this around the fretboard chromatically, so you get to experience the different width of the frets and also the different tensions. So definitely try that. And so on. You could also just do this. So basically we're combining the majority of the lick actually, but we start looping it again instead of keep going for the last two groups of ascending fours. So that far is going to be part of the original lick, but from this note again, since that's the starting note, you can basically just loop that. It's quite a long thing for a loop, but it's good to do that as well sometimes, just to really get into it. If you have trouble with the groups of four on, I think it's a good idea to do this on all strings. So pick a key, any key. You can start with a key that you're really familiar with. So let's say E minor. And just do that on each string. So you start down here. And you could also turn it around and do the opposite. That would be the, instead of 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you would have 1, 3, 2, 1. So it's the same thing but backwards. And like I said, do that on all strings. But if you want, you can also just do this one. Just to get a different sound. So try it in both ways, and I think you will just have a much better technique for it. So I really like to be systematic with all this stuff, even though, I practice this. It doesn't come up that often in other solos, but I've used it myself sometimes. So it's all worth practicing, doing it any way that you can see that fits the idea. And do make sure that you do this on all strings, because it's a very different feel doing it on the D string, A string, and E string, and so on. So all of it will be beneficial, even though you might end up using it mostly on the high E string. So that's a very important thing to think about. And for the sweep here, I would obviously work on the as it is, and make sure that you move it down the fretboard, and don't do it at this speed, just go. But I would probably just add the ascending version as well, so. I mean, if you're gonna sit there and practice, you might as well do both of them, right? So. And again, you can try it at a higher tempo like this, but I would advise you to sit 90% of your time very slow. And then add in some faster tries, once in a while. So basically, just listen to what you're doing. And I think if you're not really comfortable with sweep picking it, you're not going to gain that much by trying to go fast. What I would say though is that make sure that you do the rest strokes. Look at my pick here. I've talked about this before, and you can check out my sweep picking series here on my channel as well. It should be a separate playlist, and I'm talking about this. But just a short version here. If you look at my pick, I'm actually falling to the next string. When you do that, otherwise you're gonna, end up doing this. That's not gonna be very conducive to fast, fluid playing. So. And if you have trouble with this sweep picking technique, just try doing this. Just put your volume down and then just go like this. At first, it's going to be very uneven, but you try to get it as even as you can. Because the idea is that most people can do this. And when you get this down, it won't look the same as it does for me, because everyone looks slightly different when it comes to the right hand technique, and that's fine. But if you can do this, or some version close to it, which you will be able to do if you just sit there and experiment with it, you have the correct technique anyway. But if I would slow this down, you will see that you actually get these rest strokes. So it's very important to sort of check in on your technique once in a while when you practice this. When you practice slowly, you try to mimic that motion, but in a slower fashion. And I think sweep picking is pretty good because you sort of have built-in training wheels, since you have this natural stop on each string. So you can't really screw it up too much if you make sure that you do the actual rest strokes. But for some reason, I see a lot of students do this where they start adding the left hand. The right hand technique goes out the window. So make sure that you practice, and then if you get uncertain how it should feel or look, just take the volume down, mute the strings, and try to get this flow going again. And then slow that down, and then you will basically teach yourself how to sweep pick. And I think that's way better than looking at someone else's specific technique, because that might feel very uncomfortable for you and not fit in with your overall technique otherwise. And it's kind of useless if you have to change your positioning just for one technique. So that's a general thing as well. So if you're working on any technique, you need to find a way to make it work with the rest of your hand positionings. So if you had trouble with sweep picking, check out the series I have on the channel, but also try this tip as well. It's helped a lot of students, and sometimes I check in on this myself as well. So it's a really good thing to just have in your sort of toolbox of practice techniques. All right, that's it for this one. If you have any questions, just post them below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.